Alright, let's discuss which kind of truth is really at the core. Let me break it down for you in simple terms. Western logic is all about reasoning, right? A common type of reasoning is what Aristotle called a syllogism, which requires a major premise, a minor premise, and finally a valid conclusion based on the premises. As long as the first two premises stand true, then the conclusion must also be true. For example, we can set the first premise to be, all mammals are animals, and the second premise to be, cats are mammals. Then, we can reach the following conclusion, therefore, cats are animals. This process is called deductive reasoning. However, think about this, where does a premise come from? It must be coming from another deduction that came before it. The conclusion of that previous deduction becomes the premise for your current deduction. Then, we wonder, where does the premise of that previous deduction come from? Well, if you keep going back, there will always be another deduction, and so on. And what do you eventually find? You will come across a type of deduction where its premise is not based on any other deduction. If every premise of a deduction relies on another deduction, we will keep tracing back forever, and in the end, we will always stumble upon a deduction where its premise is not the result of any other deduction, right? In that case, the premise has to come from intuition. The ancient texts of Chinese philosophy are full of these intuitive truths about the way, truths that we can use as our starting point for logical reasoning, which is like a fun game. These amazing ancient texts are all about what has been observed, a deep understanding from the mind. Chinese philosophy is truly a treasure trove of wisdom. Laozi, 6th century BCE, the founder of Taoism, said, "The movement of the Tao, by contraries proceeds, and weakness marks the course of Tao's mighty deeds." These few lines convey great insight. In the first two lines, Laozi describes the movement of the way to be one of opposition, which means that everything in existence follows a path of endless cyclicality. When things move forward, they are bound to reverse at some point. Then, in the next two lines, Laozi suggests that weakness is useful in Taoism, implying that it is better to adapt rather than change. You might ask, why does the movement of the way follow the path of opposition? Show me exactly how you came to that conclusion. Laozi would probably reply, it is what I see. You see, Laozi did not come up with the content of Tao Te Ching through fancy logical deduction. He relied on his direct, intuitive judgment about the world. By using his observations and judgments as premises, we can deduce and reason, discovering many things in the process. For example, from his words, "The movement of the Tao, by contraries proceeds," we understand that everything in the world has a natural tendency to move toward its opposite, which helps us reach the conclusion that all things living will come to an end. It is the way. Because of Laozi's teachings, the Chinese people have a special kind of wisdom that sets us apart, a wisdom that enables us to keep hopes up and hold on to our faith even in the darkest and roughest times. Even when we are engulfed by darkness, we believe that this darkness will not last forever. Laozi's idea about everything moving to its opposition tells us that, at the darkest moment, things will surely start to turn around, and a bright future is just up ahead. That is what makes the Chinese people so strong. On the other side of the coin, we are not just all about celebrating the good times. Even when things are going great and we are feeling on top of the world, we still keep alert and prepare for bumps in the road ahead. Why? Because things are always moving towards their opposite. Through logical deduction, with Laozi's words as premises, we can reach some conclusions, the two main Taoist principles for navigating life. The first principle is that if you want to achieve something, you have to start from its opposite end. For example, if you want to be strong, you start from a weak state. If you want to reach great heights, you start from a low position. After all, everything will move toward its opposite. For someone who understands the deep thoughts of Taoism, they will go for a low-key approach as they enter the picture, so inconspicuous to the point that you may not even notice that they exist. Unfortunately, nowadays, too many only care about making a big entrance. For instance, you know the talent show candidates who set up high expectations from the judges and the audience with their words and descriptions of their efforts and talents? In the case that their performances do not live up to their big entrance or setup, the judges will not be impressed and let them proceed to the next round, and some of the candidates end up in tears. That is why the first principle is important. When you want something, you must start from the opposite side. Here is the second rule: if you want something to last a long time, it must include its opposite, for that is how the way works. If this thing cannot handle and contain opposing forces, it will fizzle out quickly. If we want capitalism to hang around for a while, we have got to incorporate some socialism, too, its opposite. A capitalist society that cannot handle a little socialism will crumble quickly. The idea is simple. Take, for instance, the people who are unemployed and no longer part of the production process, unacknowledged by economists. When economists talk about how capital moves, they do not care about those who are not involved, right? But do these people exist? They sure do, even if economists do not consider them part of the equation. The unemployed still need to survive somehow. They are still part of our society. Nevertheless, they cannot get their means of living through money because they are not making any money. With this big problem, how should society work? Should it still follow market principles? Without market principles, these people are still alive, but if you apply market principles, they cannot make it. They are struggling hard just to get by. They do not want to starve and die. So what will they do when they are completely out of options? Many will resort to crimes such as robbing banks, starting riots, etc. Can capitalism really thrive under those circumstances? No, it cannot. To prosper, capitalism requires a peaceful society. Therefore, do not insist on always sticking to market principles and the logic of capitalism. The condition for capitalist logic to work is a peaceful society. For there to be peace, we need to recognize and satisfy the needs of those outside the production process. To conclude, if we want capitalism to last a bit longer for us, we have to bring in its opposite, socialism. If you want your academic endeavors to pay off, you must manage the difficulties you face in this process. Smooth sailing in everything still needs a dose of difficulties, that is, if you want to reach your full potential and achieve greatness. I ask you to ponder these two phrases: difficulties are our benefactors, enemies are our mentors. When you are working towards something, you need opposition, you need people who disagree with you, and that pushes you to do even better. Has it been smooth sailing for you all the way? Well, the Taoists would quickly remind you that you are heading for trouble, whether you believe it or not. Overall, our younger generation has learned a ton about Western science, but we have been drifting away from traditional Chinese wisdom for way too long. Though we have been disconnected from it for ages, we still need to grasp these principles. We all wish for smooth sailing, with no obstacles, no one standing in our way, and no resistance, but we should feel happy when faced with opposition because it gives us a golden chance to better ourselves, as long as we are doing what is right. Who guarantees that we are doing the right thing? Confucianism. Who helps us navigate this world with everything going toward its opposing side? Taoism. Taoism does not teach us moral code. It teaches us how to be freer and more at ease in this world, but it does not get into topics like good versus evil. Consequently, we cannot rely solely on Taoism, an act that can cause us to lead an immoral life where there is no right and wrong. For example, in the past, people have used Laozi's Tao Te Ching as a guidebook on political strategy and manipulation. Indeed, it is one way to look at this book. In conclusion, Confucianism ensures that we do the right thing, while Taoism helps us deal with an ever-changing world. Just having Taoism alone will not suffice. How do you make the most of Taoist ideas? Well, you should build it on top of Confucianism, since Confucianism tells us to focus on developing our virtues, being close to the people, and striving for the greater good. Without the foundation of Confucianism, Taoism can make us cunning. For instance, what is the best way to take down your enemies using Taoist principles? Flatter them, help them reach the peak of their glory quickly, and make them grow arrogant. Then, their downfall will come soon enough. Let them run rampant so that you can better capture them or bring them down. Pretty smart move, right? You can learn all of this from Laozi's Tao Te Ching. Then, you should read Machiavelli's The Prince and compare the two works. The Prince teaches European rulers how to play political games and use immoral acts to achieve political gains. Tao Te Ching teaches the same tactics of manipulation and much more. Taoist principles are truly all-encompassing.